Hi, Bella. How are you?
I am really well. How are you going, Meg?
I'm so good, and I'm really excited to hear your story today. I know it's a nerve-wracking experience having done mine, but I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say and everyone else hearing as well.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Awesome.
So before I get started, I just wanted to say, I am a supremely happy, healthy, fulfilled 47-year-old woman. And I know this seems really silly to say, but I mention this up front because despite this, maybe in spite of this, alcohol nearly killed me. And because of this, I feel compelled to talk about my experience because I'm living proof with many others out there that alcohol is so dangerous. It can trap anyone, but we can triumph over it. So I just really wanted to say that up front.
That's amazing. And that sent shivers up my spine.
Yeah.
To be that low and then to come to rise is just
to come
amazing.
back out.
Gives a lot of people hope.
Yeah, thanks, Meg. And I also wanted to say before I get there that I wanted to touch on 4 major life themes that have been ever present throughout my life. So firstly, always from day one, I've had a pursuit of desperately wanting to find and be included in my tribe. So find my group of girlfriends. Secondly, finding my voice. I've always wanted to try and express it, to be heard, to find my opinions rather than be the fence sitter. And I'm a really good listener rather than somebody that can really express their views. But I've always wanted to do that, be that sort of person. Thirdly, I've always wanted to find myself, my purpose. Who the heck am I? What do I want to do? That is awesome, fulfilling and meaningful. Always had that in the back of my mind. And fourthly, I've always had, an underlying, ever-present simmering nervousness. I guess a very mild anxiety that's always been there. And I mentioned this because these 4 reasons, I think, were the reasons why I drank alcohol. I formed beliefs that I needed to drink to overcome these things. Drinking exacerbated these 4 things. And I mentioned this, no surprises, that these 4 elements were the things that I had to work on when I hit my rock bottom. Because as we both know, as many people know, drinking holds you in, I guess, an emotional abeyance from learning those real developmental skills to do the work. So I had to really, when I became alcohol free, work on those things.
Do you know what? I resonate with all of that. Absolutely. Yeah. Those 4 things could be mine. And I think that will resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah, thanks, Meg. And yeah, exactly. I think many people can relate to those things. So shall I start on that first drink moment?
Yes, please. Off you go.
Well, I can remember the first time I drank, my first real drinking experience. I may have had a few sips before that time, but I was 14 years old and it was with my high school girlfriends. And these are the girls that I'm still really close with now. But we were at one of my friends' houses. We had a bottle. We all drank from it. We all got quite tipsy. And I can distinctly remember feeling really included, really loved, like I'd finally made it home. And I guess before then, I had never really been included in a friendship group because we had moved houses when I was halfway through primary school. So my high school girls were, for me, my absolute tribe, my first tribe. And it felt rebellious. It felt like it was our secret. We felt mature, cool, made me funny, made me talkative, assertive. And I guess, surprise, surprise, these are the things that I always look for from then when I drank alcohol, to be included and to have fun, be rebellious. And from that point on, alcohol was always present. It was always there at all of our parties. We were kids of the 90s. And so we bonded over grunge, music, bands, all of those movies we loved, The Lost Boys, Less Than Zero.
Yes.
All of those movies where there was kind of, I guess, a bit of a dark element. There was always risky behavior involved. Yeah. And at the time I was unaware why, but I used alcohol to help me socialize and find confidence and to be included. Thankfully, throughout school, I was smart and I did well, and I played a ton of sport. So I kept really fit and kept my grades ticking along. and I headed off to university to study law. And I left home to do that at the age of 17. So I was quite young for my year and quite immature, I guess, for my age. I moved to a different state to study, and I suddenly found myself trying to break into a whole new friendship gang because I knew absolutely nobody there when I turned up. So again, there was alcohol to smooth the bumps, lubricate the social moments, and we all just drank for Australia, basically. There was the uni bar. We were always ever present there, playing pool and knocking back the beers. And looking back, I can see elements of people pleasing. You know, I was able to form really good friends. And again, I'm still friends with those university mates that I met, but I was always changing myself to fit into the group that I was hanging around. I even had dreadlocks at uni. I became this took on the hippie persona.
Wow. Yeah.
Which was great. It was really good fun. And thankfully, I always had my eye on my goals of studying hard. I got good marks, always kept fit, thankfully. And I'd say at that point, there was always elements of, I guess, restrictive eating, extreme exercising coming into it as well. So after that, I became a lawyer and I loved it, focused on my career in Sydney, and still always, I can remember standing around with the other women lawyers there, dreaming of doing something entirely different, which I don't think is so unusual, but I used to dream about becoming a painter, a florist, or, some other business other than being a lawyer. So I guess there was a kind of an imposter syndrome there, but, I loved it.
Yeah.
And then came marriage at 32. And by 35, I had two gorgeous stepdaughters who are now 22 and 24, absolutely amazing ladies. And I had two boys under the age of 2.
That's amazing. 4 kids in 2 years.
Yeah,
Holy
it was
moly.
a lot.
That is
and it was wonderful all at the same time. And I was married to a guy and I'm still married to that guy, who had a really high pressured, high stress job. So there was a lot on my plate, which I openly accepted and I took on willingly. But I had a lot to deal with, particularly what it meant to be a stepmom, which was a steep learning curve, and not in relation to the girls, but I guess the politics involved with the parenting, which again, I have to emphasize everybody was doing their best. But there was sometimes heightened emotions, stressful times, and everybody was under pressure just going about their own lives. And because I was at home with my own 2 toddlers, a lot of it in my household fell on me. And I also went back to work really early when my youngest was 9 months. So integrating back into work was hard. And I think it just very rapidly, the anxiety and the stress just started building up. And alcohol was again always there to relax me at night, give me energy at night also to cook dinner and do all the kid things. Sometimes we shared a bottle. Sorry, Meg.
I was just going to say, did you use that time also when the kids went to bed, just to have your own time there? Or
Yeah. And so I can distinctly remember basically holding my breath from the moment I left the house and only letting it out when I had my first glass of wine on the couch after the kids had gone to bed, or maybe it was my second glass by that stage. But it was just like, okay, this is my time to relax. Yeah. Also tied into that was my eldest son had quite severe separation anxiety. So I was that mum at the school drop-off trying to pull my child off me, push him into class.
Very,
and then
difficult.
run to the car because I had to run to court, and just driving, crying the whole way into the city. So I think I just had flight, fight, freeze all at once, pushing it down, and relaxing them with alcohol at night. And It is really hard for female lawyers approaching their midlife, I think, in this time period, because it really does feel like your life bottlenecks then, excuse the pun, but everything you've worked for 15 years, like becoming a partner or senior counsel, meets right at the time that you're having your children or you're thinking about needing to have your children. Your metabolism is changing, your health is changing. And if you're not in a good routine at that point, you're putting on weight, your hormones are not balanced. And drinking is just such often a reliable helper for energy and pushing through. And it's, it's ever present in the workplace. And just the last thing I'll say, and I'd love to talk about this a bit more later on in our podcast, but there was a recent survey which showed that female lawyers in midlife are engaging in greater, riskier drinking behaviours than men. And I think a lot of this has to do with trying to balance their lives. It's bloody hard, and it's not just lawyers. But that's my experience.
Yeah, you know what, there are amazing dads out there. I'm absolutely not saying there's not, but I think so much falls on the mum, regardless of your career choice or anything. And I know for me, we take on their emotions.
Yeah.
And you having a child that had separation, that just does so much to our heart and our heads.
Yeah.
And we're, in my situation, I was the one that was in charge of that,
Yes.
on top of everything else.
Yeah. Because you're worrying, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Am I causing my child to be upset and not adjust to his new environment like all the other kids?
Yeah, and there's guilt.
Really hard to switch out.
Absolutely.
And so, like those stats, I found myself trapped. I was drinking to restore myself from the fatigue and the hangover that alcohol had created in the first place. Yes, it put me to sleep. It gave me energy, gave me a sugar kick, because I was not usually eating properly during the day. And then I was waking up at 3 a.m. ruminating, running through the endless lists of things. And I had no idea what alcohol really did to your body. So I didn't know at that time that it was because of the alcohol that I was waking up at 3 a.m. and becoming more stressed. But I was able to realize that there was an imbalance, and all of this wasn't working. And so I left work, and I then transitioned into being a mum at home. And that was really good on many levels. But I jumped into mummy wine culture, which was brilliant, except for the wine part. And I don't know, but it was like I jumped into it and it felt like I was a teenager all over again. Because I hadn't tapped into the mums in my neighborhood at our local primary school, because I was always running off to work.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I met them, and they're cool. They're great women. They're still my good friends here. But it was like we had this time on our hands, which we hadn't had before, because we had the kids as toddlers. We had lunches and we were dancing, we were going out to dinner, and I loved it so much. But I think what I hadn't factored into it all is that I had nothing intellectually to do. So I missed the doing and the achieving, the external motivation and validation that I had when I was working. Yeah. And I know that, mums get this as well, but I didn't know how to get it when I was home. And I then, I guess, shifted all of that energy into silly things. Like I shopped a lot. I planned good holidays. I kept ruminating, what did I want to do with my life? That never-ending question. I did volunteer a lot. And one good thing I did do is that I saw a career counsellor, and she remarkably said that she recommended I'd be really good at being a counsellor. Oh, wow. So in the back of my mind, I slowly began researching all the education institutions around. But meanwhile, I continued to party really hard. And I started at about the same level as the other mums. And then I just think I took it to another level altogether. So by the time I was in my mid-40s. I was really, really close to moving forward in a lot of meaningful things. So I'd found my female tribe here in my local community. I had found, but I hadn't registered in my counselling course. And, they were 2 of the 4 things that I started with, those themes that I was just so close to ticking. But alcohol had already just become too much. My tolerance for it was massive. I was cracking a bottle earlier in the evening, and I was actually drinking to feel normal before I went out. So I started to do some really strange things with alcohol. And this last part happened quite quickly and quite dramatically. So suddenly, and here are some examples. So I was going out with my husband for a date night. He was meeting me from work and I was coming from home, but I'd already had a lot of alcohol before I left home. And it was obvious I was quite drunk before I met him. And this was just mortifyingly shameful for me. And I think I did this a few times, really. I can remember turning up for a really important dinner with friends. I was already plastered before I got there. And I can remember I had to sleep on one of their beds for the night while they continued on with the dinner. All of these things were forgivable, but it was adding up. And more frequently, when my husband was coming home from work for a Friday night chill, we might be having a movie on the couch. I was already a bottle down and he knew it. And I guess another thing was that if we'd gone out for parties, I started staying after he'd left and coming home after him. So it was really clearly starting to affect our relationship. And on top of that, I was tired, disappointed, endlessly disappointed in myself, shamed. So here was the fork in the road, and I was really plodding down going the wrong way. And I looked like crap too. I was bloated, exercising stupidly as well, and dieting to counteract it all. I think there's a real crossover there with alcohol, exercise, dieting. And I guess there are other behaviors that started too. And it's really hard to say this, but I was hiding bottles, stashing bottles in the recycling bin, becoming too familiar with Pete the Bottle Man. Actually, I'll say that again, Meg. Sorry. And becoming too familiar with the local bottle shop. Replacing bottles I had already drunk at home so that I wasn't found out. And I didn't know why I was doing this. I didn't know how to stop. And I didn't know what I did not know what I had turned into at the time. And like many, I was setting moderation goals. But I couldn't keep to those moderation goals. So with that exacerbated the guilt and the shame, the disappointment. And I was getting extreme anxiety, but in really weird moments. So for example, going to the hairdressers, I'm a blonde, so I need to go every 6 to 8 weeks, was really difficult because I felt trapped when they put the foils on in my hair, knowing I had to stay there for another couple of hours was really extremely anxiety provoking. I can remember it. So, or if I had to go on a flight, extremely nervous. And one day I went out and I had too much alcohol, dangerously and stupidly too much. And when we got home, I couldn't walk or talk properly. And it just freaked my husband out so much that he took me to the hospital. I just, talking about this, I can't believe what I put him through. And my sister and my mum, who were gathered also in to help him because he was so worried. It was horrible. And my blood alcohol was extreme and dangerously high. I had to stay in hospital for 4 days. And
wow, that's quite a stay.
Yeah, look, I might have been able to return the day after, but there was one doctor who I can remember, was just exceptionally full of compassion and kindness,
Oh, wow.
who said that her brother had recovered from alcohol. And she
Oh,
just looked at me, I can remember, and just said that I owed it to myself to check myself into rehab and to try and do this. And so
wow.
she, I think, pulled strings to get me
Ah,
out of emergency and onto the ward so that I could book myself in somewhere and go straight there.
wow. What a
Amazing.
godsend.
Yeah,
Wow.
she was amazing.
Wow.
Absolutely
Oh, that's
amazing.
so amazing. Yeah.
And I accepted that, and my family was relieved.
Mm,
And
I bet.
so off I went to a treatment centre in Byron Bay,
Mm,
and that was the start of it all. Um,
wow.
and it was I say it was the start because it wasn't all plain sailing from there.
Mm,
But I had 4 weeks of really examining what I was doing to myself. I learned self-care and how to um sorry, what did I say? So I learned self-care. And on top of that, my struggle with alcohol was also transparent. So it wasn't just me alone trying to set my own moderation rules. There was open accountability, and I wasn't doing this by myself anymore.
mm.
And in Byron, I was able to book into my counselling course because I thought
Ah,
a large part of it was needing to do something and find that purpose in my career and
yeah,
what I was
for
doing in
sure.
my life.
Mm.
And that led me to This Naked Mind.
Mm.
Because Byron was terrific, but it didn't
Mhm.
give me the tangible tools and techniques that I needed. It was a really good start, but I needed more.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they recognize in those treatment centers as well, that they do discharge you on the understanding that, you need to go and do your own work as well.
Yeah.
And I was holding on to a crap load of pain, shame, regret, and I was still trying to moderate this time, and I say a normal person in quotes, and it was impossible in my mind to be able to socialize alcohol free. And, remember at the start, one of my deep seated core issues was around finding my core friends and people pleasing. And I was just so anxious. I can remember at the thought of what people would think of
Mm.
me. Actually, Meg, I might just say that again. Sorry.
Yeah.
And I was holding onto a shitload of pain, shame, and regret. And I was still trying to moderate like a normal person in quotes. And on top of that, I was exceptionally worried what people would think of me. I was
Mm.
really obsessing about what my friendship group would do if I tried to hang out alcohol free. So a
Mm.
lot of this was playing onto my mind, probably unnecessarily so. And This Naked Mind had their 30-day alcohol experiment, which I religiously did. I got my journal and I did every single day, responded to all of their videos and their worksheets. And I'd never journaled before, so this was brand new to me. And it just worked so well it kept me busy for 30 days. But the end result was that it had taken a large part of my shame away. I reconciled that it wasn't my fault that I was in this position, but yes, it was my responsibility to get myself out of it. And a really important lesson that I learned was, it's basically a mantra that I still tell myself now, which is I can drink if I want to, but I choose not to.
Yes.
And for me, that just respects my autonomy, that inner rebel that is deep down inside has been heard and honored. And it helped me to do some work to overcome my core beliefs. Sorry. And it helped me do some work to overcome my core beliefs that I needed alcohol to socialize, to fit in, and to find my voice. And it worked. It's
Yeah.
so weird.
Yeah.
And I do still socialize a lot, but I also respect my introverted ways now, and I leave earlier. And I
Mhm.
still laugh and dance and go out, and I do all of those things. But now I leave early and
Mm.
I wake up early.
Oh, so nice.
Yeah, all of those things.
Mhm.
And, if I can just come back to those 4 things of my life that I was trying to
Mm.
overcome at the start, well, it's just no surprise that going alcohol free allowed me to tick all of those boxes. My tribe, well, all of my friends, my family, I'm closer than ever with all of them because I'm able to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be present in all of our conversations. It just adds
Yeah,
to the friendship.
totally.
I'm not dancing around like an idiot, slurring away in the background.
Mm,
And
mm.
my voice, it's here louder than ever. I'm on a podcast, for God's sake, telling my
Woohoo!
my deepest, darkest secrets.
Yes.
I'm blogging. I'm using my voice to support women and parents. And I just needed to be able to use it. What would I say? Oh, sorry. And my voice. I am here telling people my deepest, darkest secrets on a podcast, for God's sake. I'm blogging. I just needed to use it in a way that rang true to me. And I'm supporting women through my counselling and coaching practice. So that third one, sorry, Meg, can I start this again?
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just slowing down. Okay. And alcohol-free, going alcohol-free has allowed me to tick all of those boxes. So the first one, finding my tribe, well, my friendships with my girlfriends, my relationships with my family, they're closer than ever now because I'm present, I'm honest, I'm vulnerable. All of those ingredients that you need to make good friendships are there, more than they were before when I was, dancing around like an idiot in the background,
Oh, yes.
using my voice. Well, I'm here on a podcast telling my deepest, darkest secrets. I'm using my
Amazing.
voice to blog, to support women, to support parents when it comes to issues surrounding alcohol. I'm just using it in a way that rings true to me, that's honest and aligns with my values that, I wasn't able to do when I was a lawyer. That never-ending question, who am I? Well, it's somebody now that's living honestly and to the fullest that she can do in a job that aligns with my values. I'm really excited to get out of bed and do what we do. And the anxiety and the nervousness for which alcohol fueled has all but gone.
Amazing.
And yeah, Meg, I know you can relate to that as well.
Yes.
And on this point, I'm studying to become a grey area drinking coach from Jolene Park, focusing on our physiology and our nervous system for this reason.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so all of it's coming full circle. And I could never have done these things with alcohol in my life.
Yeah.
And it just reminds me of Ruby Warrington's paradoxes of alcohol, like how we drink to feel confident, but we wake up in a sea of self-doubt, or like what else did she say? We drink believing that it's cool when often we do it just to fit in, or we drink to feel sexier when it numbs our senses and it makes us look like shit.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my story.
Incredible. Wow. What
Thanks,
an
Meg.
amazing journey. And I just have to go back quickly because when you were talking about after the mummy wine culture time, when you were sort of drinking before you went out to meet your husband or before a dinner or hiding bottles, everything that you did there, I did. And
my God.
I know at the time I felt quite isolated and alone in that.
Yes.
But just hearing what there must be so many people that have gone through that. And also you mentioned, you knew that you wanted to leave work and everything. I think that starts with a little niggle, doesn't it?
Yes.
And something needs to change.
Yep.
And I just wanted to bring that up because you also mentioned rehab was your beginning, but not the end type thing. And I think, we've both seen that it takes a few times, that niggle started us and it might take, 6 or 7 goes or years. Everyone's different.
Everybody is absolutely different. You do it in your own time.
Yeah.
But once you've had that experience and you've learned a little bit what alcohol does to you, and you've felt how good it feels when you've gone alcohol free for a period after heavy drinking, you can't unknow that feeling and what you've learned. So yes, you're going to may have some bumps in the road after that time, but if you can just keep lengthening the periods that you really can try and go alcohol free, you can get there. Yeah, you can get there.
And you've just talked about, and I'm the same, that we have found such happiness on the other side.
Yeah.
And we can go out and belly laugh and dance and not fall over in a heap with my skirt up. You know, it's so not sexy. Go out and do everything you just said that we think alcohol's doing, but without it.
Yeah, I agree. And Meg, you just reminded me, you know, and I'm so grateful that you said it, that you also did those things with bottles. It is such a shameful thing to say that you've done, but I think it is quite frequently done, even if you've just gulped down your glass and refilled it from the bottle to pretend that you haven't had that glass.
Yes.
And it's all part of that, well, for me, facade of wanting to show that I'm living, I guess, a respectable, I don't want to say perfect life, but hiding those little bits behind the scenes, hiding those behaviors is all part of that kind of perfectionist facade that I think a lot of women have when they leave the house. You've got to be a certain kind of person. That's the kind of pressure that I put on myself, I think. Absolutely. And the reason why I mention that, because I was really thinking about this point when I was recently on holiday, that part of living this life, being alcohol free, helping other women that have done this same thing and normalizing those behaviors and giving them, you know, that reassurance that it doesn't turn them into a bad person, that alcohol's addictive and it leads us to do weird things, that once you're able to express it in a vulnerable way on a podcast, it just brings you ever close to living honestly. And living honestly is then able to bring you closer to knowing who you are, and it gives you strength. And it I was thinking about this on a holiday, that I've never really felt so happy being, you know, overseas with my family on this alcohol-free holiday. And I reflected that I think it was because I'm not trying to be anybody else other than myself. And it's just so much easier. Takes the pressure off.
Absolutely. You know, we're being authentic. And I think a lot of our journey was trying to find that person that we know we are. Yeah. You know, and having that shame, and it just made it impossible, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's freedom, isn't it? It's a peace.
Yes.
It's a freedom that we're finding, which is just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. All of the anxiety that I had trying to cover my tracks.
Oh, absolutely.
I would never want to go back to again.
Me neither. And you said you knew the Pete at the bottle shop. Well, I had to go to
who is a great guy.
Bottle shop. Yes.
He's a great guy.
Well, do you know what? The guy at my bottle shop was a lovely guy. And but I ended up going to different bottle shops, so they didn't know I was going so often. And replacing that bottle somehow made me even convince myself I wasn't.
Yes.
You know, I put up a facade for myself, and you know, oh, look, the bottle's full. Yeah, because I went and bought it to replace the empty one. But somehow it was an excuse that, you know, bought me more time to keep doing what I did know was not right.
Yeah, hiding it from yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, Bella, who are you working with now, and who do you want to work with in the future?
At the moment, I'm working with women who are grey area drinkers. So they're women that are not physically addicted to alcohol, but emotionally are. They've had stints of being alcohol-free in the past and now just want that extra help to fully become alcohol-free. They're often women that are trying to balance their lives. They're juggling with family, juggling with work and career, and they're trying to find joy and purpose in their life. I guess essentially women that have shared similar stories to mine.
Yeah.
Often they're at that fork in the road in midlife and trying to choose the one that leads to health and happiness. And also at the moment, I'm working with parents in relation to how they can better communicate with their kids what the risks are around alcohol.
Fantastic.
And that's something that I'm really passionate about because I just wonder if when I was a kid, when I was that kid that was anxious and lacking confidence and had that nervousness, if there were some more tools in the toolbox way back then, whether it would have stopped me from really jumping into jumping on the alcohol bandwagon.
And you touched on that with me last week.
Yeah.
And I do think that just even offering them an awareness, education is just so different to what we had available.
Yeah, I agree because I just inhaled this information at the age of 45. But if I had a foundation way back then, it would have been a whole lot easier to just remember it and start the education process again when I was older. May not have done much to change where I ended, but I do think it would have stopped me from going as far down the treacherous path that I did. I would have stopped earlier and I would have reached out earlier. And, if we can help some kids avoid that as well, then
Absolutely.
I think that's a fantastic thing.
And if it takes away shame, if it takes away shame, and that's so much a reason that people don't reach out for help.
Absolutely. I agree. And the other thing that I think is really important to say is that a lot of parents who have had their own experiences around alcohol that they're not proud of find it really hard to start that conversation with their own kids.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
They don't know how to communicate the risks of alcohol, whether they should share their own experiences or not. And they're also worried about the spotlight that it can shine on their own behaviors.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to normalize that conversation. We need to do it earlier and better. I could talk so long about this subject.
Well, we will on another podcast.
Another one. Yeah.
It's fantastic, though. I think that's just a wonderful thing that you're doing.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Megs. All right.
So I think that brings us to the end, Bella, of your sharing your story today, which has been absolutely wonderful and eye-opening. Obviously not all wonderful, but to see how far you've come and how happy you are that is wonderful. And it's helped me. So I'm sure it's going to be helping a lot of people hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Meg. All right.
Well, we'll be back soon with another podcast.